Doing that. Don't hide, don't just lie down. We can't afford to lose this fight. The oceans will rise, cities will drown, unless we all unite. 'Cause the earth has a fever, and we can't look away. When we deny her, that's our future betrayed. The earth has a fever, of that we can be sure. The mercury is rising, and we must be the cure. The earth has a fever, we must be the cure.
Well, good morning, good morning. It's so good to see everyone, and thank you all for being here. I know that there's so many competing opportunities with our time, and it's just wonderful that you're here worshiping with us this morning. I am Reverend Carol Johnson. I'm a parish associate here at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, and I'd like to welcome all of you who are here in person, as well as all of you who are joining us by Zoom. And maybe at some point we'll be able to share the Zoom pictures, because I really miss not seeing the faces of our friends in Switzerland and in Albany, New York, and in Oklahoma and in Brazil, and our friends that join us from all over. But we're glad everyone is here. You'll see probably some of us are wearing masks, others are not. That's fine, whatever you are most comfortable with. The one thing that we do ask is that if you're not feeling well, please take care of yourself and take care of us and stay home. Donna Rutherford, our parish nurse, is taking her own advice, and she was exposed to COVID last week and wasn't feeling real well this week, but we did just hear that she has tested negative, but she's staying home. So we request that you do that. We'll miss you, but we'll then see you next week. The friendship tablets are the turquoise tablets at the end of the aisles. If everyone could please fill those out and let us know that you're here. And then finally, the area that's out here is now called our mission lobby. And there's different things on the tables there every week. So we encourage that everybody go out and check that. I know that this week there's Earth Day things on one of the tables. And after our service, we're still looking for people to sign up for to work with kids. Many of you know that Daniel is no longer here, and he did such a wonderful job with our children. And so we're spearheading a whole new program with them. And anybody who's excited to help work with us, we would love to have you sign up. I think Lynn King is going to be sitting out there for anyone who's interested in joining in that fun endeavor. And with that, let's start our service.
One of the things that's so important is that this be a place where you know not only that you're welcome, but also that you'll be respected and safe. And so, at least for a while, we're doing a covenant of community, which reinforces that we're going to honor one another and that this will be a place where you'll be emotionally and physically safe. I think after COVID, that's, even though we know that at one level, it's helpful to do that. The way it's laid out, though, it starts with the all. So why don't we read the first line all together, and then the one will be me and the all will be you. So why don't we begin together? We pledge in the name of all that is sacred to be a sanctuary for all who have gathered here. May this be a safe place for every age, gender, class, ability, sexual orientation, race, and belief. May we speak our truth in love, but also listen with respect. May this gathering be an oasis from the storm for all here gathered. Let us worship together.
Please rise as you're able.
8 seconds. I have to remember that. It's now time for the children and young at heart. I don't know if we have any children, but I know we have a bunch of young at heart people. For our puppet show, Mr. Monkey and his friends are here and ready to talk with us.
Hello! Hello!
Hello,
Oh, you
hello.
wonderful people. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
It's so pretty right now. And pretty soon it's going to be hot.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad you said that, Hortense.
Yes?
I happen to have a lemonade stand that I'm opening after church.
That's great, little buddy. I sure get thirsty when it's hot.
And you know, that's the bright side of global warming. It'll be great for my lemonade sales.
Okay. Well, anyway, Jack, are you feeling okay?
Well, yeah, I am. I had a little tummy ache in my tummy.
Well, that's too bad. Do you know what's wrong?
No, not really. I got sick right after I went to Mr. Monkey's lemonade stand.
Wow, what a crazy coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, now that I think about it, I got kind of sick too.
Oh,
That lemonade was kind of watery.
Well, you know, these days in business, you have to cut back on a few things if you're going to make a profit.
well, you know, in fact, it didn't taste like lemons at all. It was oily.
You have to cut way back on costs. Like, for example, lemons.
Mr. Monkey, did you have any lemons at all in your lemonade?
Well, technically, no. But I gave each class a big squirt of refreshing new lemon pledge.
Oh, that explains a
Mr.
lot.
Monkey, you used a furniture polish instead of lemons?
It's a business, Hortense. If there are any problems, the invisible hand of the market will take care of it.
Well, if it's a business, did you get any repeat customers?
No, I think I need a better ad campaign.
Hmm.
You need to stop trying to get ahead of your competition and be a servant. That's the best way.
Well, by golly, I think you're right, Hortense. You know, and Earth Day is a perfect day to remember that people and animals are more important than money.
Jack, let's not get partisan. The survival of the species is a very controversial issue. So let's just be spiritual here.
Nature isn't a partisan issue, Mr. Monkey. Young people, do you love nature?
Yeah.
Oh, I do too. And what's your favorite part of nature? Anyone? Trees.
Carrots.
Carrots, yes. Flowers. Watermelon. Running water. Clean running water, yes. Broccoli, really? All right. Very
There's-
good boy, are you?
There's one in every crowd, isn't there? Yeah.
I love these answers. Jim, do you have a song?
Fortunately, I do.
Oh, good.
Fortunately, I do. Well, next week is our big celebration. And so we're going to practice a song this week that we'll use next week. And if you've ever been to like marches and protests and stuff, there's a chant that people do. What do you want? Because justice. When do you want it? Now. So those will be the words of the lyrics. What do you want? Or just what do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. And then the people united will never be defeated. The people united will one day live in peace. One day live in peace.
Okay.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will one day live in peace. What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will one day live in peace. What do we want?
Justice.
What do we want?
Justice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next week.
All right then, we're ready.
We need to get some kids who still have their teeth. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a cheap shot? Thank you.
Good morning. This is my first time back in this sanctuary in 2 years. It's great to see you all. Our scripture this morning is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 25 through 34. Listen with your hearts. That's why I tell you not to worry about your livelihood, what you are to eat or drink or use for clothing. Isn't life more than just food? Isn't the body more than just clothes? Look at the birds of the air in the sky. They don't sow or reap. They gather nothing into barns, yet our God in heaven feeds them. Aren't you more important than they? Which of you, by worrying, can add a moment to your lifespan? Why be anxious about clothing? Learn a lesson from the way the wildflowers grow. They don't work, they don't spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in full splendor was arrayed like one of these. If God can clothe in such splendor the grasses of the field, which bloom today and are thrown on the fire tomorrow, won't God do so much more for you? You who have so little faith, stop worrying then over questions such as, what are we to eat? What are we to drink? What are we to wear? Those without faith are always running after these things. God knows everything you need. Seek first God's reign and God's justice, and all these things will be given to you besides. Enough of worrying about tomorrow. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Today has troubles enough of its own. These are ancient words from our tradition for our present day contemplation. Thanks be to God.
I'm going to try to remember when to tell y'all to put the slides up. But I will warn you, in the first service, I did as abysmally as ever. So, is this important? Oh, okay. I won't lose it. It'll be here. Don't worry. See, that's my point. Don't worry. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Not the first slide yet. Yeah. Because I'll briefly lose control of the thing. I think kind of a general consensus in American Christianity that Jesus was a very nice person, but kind of clueless. And so advice, like today's advice, is something that you just kind of nod, and you don't say anything. But you don't think this is going to have any practical application in your life. It almost sounds like a very classic philosopher, and that's our first slide. Perhaps you've heard of him, Alfred E. Newman. Does Mad Magazine still exist? No. Young people, do you know who this is? You do? Okay. Good. What? Oh, okay. There was a satirical magazine called Mad Magazine. And this was a guy who was not known for his intelligence. Put it like that. And his slogan was, "What me worry." And like that song that says, "Don't worry, be happy." That advice, if you are worried about what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear, it's, tragically bad advice. I don't think that Jesus is saying that you don't have problems that are worth having concerns and worrying about. I think you wouldn't be a human being if you didn't sometimes kind of get lost in that. But I think what we're seeing today is the beginning of Jesus' teachings. This is like coming straight out of the gate. And to me, it's very important to realize that in order to do this, he took people out into nature. This is not traditional Christianity. But in traditional Christianity, Jesus would have given them Apostles' Creed and said, "Memorize this and get back with me. I want you to recite it as mindlessly as a parrot, and then you'll be saved. You'll be on the team." Now, I don't want to sound critical. But why would Jesus take people out of the church, out of the city, out of their businesses, out of their political centers, and take them to a countryside, wildflowers and birds, and say, "Look at this"? Why was that the starting place to understand Christianity? I think this is an incredibly important question. And you see this in the ancient prophets of Judaism. It's grounded into life and into nature. You see this in Buddhism. You see this in all great religions, that they're not really talking about the institution of the religion. It's not about getting brainwashed. It's not about getting shamed with rules. It's finding your deep connections into life. So it's probably going to be helpful today if you can think about what you've been worried about lately. Not as a way of dismissing it or minimizing it, but going deeper into who you are and feeling wider connections to things, so that you realize that even with the human fears that you have, what other people think of you, what's going to happen to you, there are ways of still being loving and living without dismissing those. So Jesus isn't saying forget that you have worries. It's that there's something deeper. Because what can happen with worries is that we can get stuck. We get tunnel vision. We're saying, I'm not going to worry about this tonight. I'm just going to get a good night's sleep. And, in 15 minutes, you wake up and you're sitting there with a stress stream. So is there a way to go deeper, not to deny the problems that you have, but to go deeper in them, to find your bearings with that? Thomas Jefferson once said, how much damage those things have done to us that never happened. Things that we've worried about. I mean, just think of your own life. The times that you just, got obsessed for a long period of time about something that might happen and it didn't happen. One of my favorite quotes on this topic, somebody said, if you want to test your memory, ask yourself what you were worried about this time last year. To realize that we can become obsessed. This is a very human thing. And that fear can become the center of our life, the core of our life, and we'd be very reactive to it. There has to be a way of going deeper. So what Jesus does is take people out of the city. If we try to live a spiritual life within our cultural context, it's probably not going to happen. We're going to try to fit great truths into very narrow bandwidths that we have for spirituality. So Jesus takes people outside, and the first thing, just going on a mountain, think of what that does to you psychologically. Now, we don't know if Jesus stood on the mountain. That's what it sounds like in Matthew. In Luke, it sounds like he was on the plain and people were up like an amphitheater. The mountain, they're sitting on the mountain. But either way, your horizon broadens when you sit on a mountain. When you're sitting on a mountain looking, you just have a sense that it's okay because I'm a part of something bigger. I got tunnel vision. I got stuck in my problems. But just looking around helps. So this first phrase that Jesus gives us, and he says, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, about your body, what you will wear. Is not life not more than food and body? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly parent feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Now, I don't think like an ecological view says we're more valuable than the birds. They probably, oh, thank you. Yes, my next slide. Oh, this is the Sea of Galilee. That's going up on the mountain. As you can see, very transformative experience. And next, yes. Oh. What would happen to your understanding of your life if you looked at yourself from a bird's eye view? You know what I'm saying? To not look at the world as though you're trying to explain why it's treating you the way it is. Instead, realize that you're a very small part of something large. That Jesus is saying, if you look at the birds, they don't work or gather in grains, gather in silos and things. Again, whatever economic system you believe in, that's fine. But Jesus is saying that's not who you are. Right? And simply focusing on those things can get you in a tailspin where you're so worried. And the thing about like economics is we stop worrying about what we need and we start comparing things with other people. And we can be just as miserable. I mean, think of the baseball players that are miserable at $100 million because somebody else is making more. I mean, literally miserable. And that's just the kind of glitch in human consciousness. If we compare ourselves to somebody else, we can always be unhappy. If we realize we're part of a whole, when we go out to nature, we feel that interconnectedness. We see the birds flying overhead. We feel that animals are not our enemies. They're our larger family kind of thing. Think about when human beings began, before rich people owned the planet. And everything wasn't private property. And when you wanted to eat, you just went out and you picked something. What does that do to your soul to remember that? because that's what we need to get back to. Maybe not that exactly, but to realize we are out of our environment, which means our instincts don't work and they get triggered by outsiders. Demagogues come along and make us afraid of other people and afraid of the future. So Jesus is saying, that's not who you are. You are more important than just what you're earning and the task that you're trying to do. This world belongs to all of us. That's the bird's eye view, right? You weren't born on rich people's planet. Everything belongs to all. And we need to spiritually take that in. I love braiding sweetgrass. People in the class introduced me to that. And there's a line about what it means for us to step out of the web of life and live in this artificial environment. It says, philosophers call this state of isolation and disconnection species loneliness, a deep, unnamed sadness stemming from estrangement from the rest of creation, from the loss of relationship. As our human dominance of the world has grown, we've become more isolated, more lonely, where we can no longer call out to our neighbors. And E.O. Wilson, who's sometimes called Ant-Man, sociobiologist, had a great effect on me of thinking of human beings not as an isolated species, but as part of the web of life, as much animals as anybody else on the planet. It says humanity is part of nature, a species that evolved among other species. The more closely we identify ourselves with the rest of life, the more quickly we will be able to discover the sources of human sensibility and acquire the knowledge on which an enduring ethic, a sense of preferred direction, can be built. So the first thing Jesus is saying, as I understand it, for a moment, leave the city, leave religion, leave the economic situation, and look at life from a bird's eye viewpoint. What is the whole of which you're a part? And the second thing he says is look at the flowers. I was mentioning last week, it's fascinating to me. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. The Sea of Galilee is very much like Central Texas. You know, it's basically brown much of the year, but they have this explosion of wildflowers. Kind of thing. Did y'all know there's a Reverend Jim's Dam Bar by, is it Canyon Lake, I think? So sometime we have to do a pilgrimage there. It's called Reverend Jim's Dam Bar. Dam Bar. Yeah. So this explosion of wildflowers. Jesus is pointing that out to the students, the disciples. They're trying to understand. Why are flowers so healing at a funeral? They die quicker than people do. But when we see flowers, I think what it reminds us, as I was saying last week, is the beauty is worth the pain. Right? The beauty of a flower, it almost doesn't matter how long it lasts. We understand it's worth it. The beauty is worth the pain. So I think when we look at wildflowers, it's saying realize that life is a kind of combustion. Right? We're like candles. And there's no way to live by pulling back from life. Trying to be permanent does not help us at all. Right? We will put out a certain amount of light, and sometimes the candles that burn the quickest burn the brightest. That's just the way of things. Everybody here has lost somebody who died way too early, but they're central in your memory the rest of your life. Like you can't measure value by longevity. And so worrying about a long life, Jesus is saying it doesn't add a second to your life, but it can take away the life that you have. Somebody said it's like a rocking chair where it gives you something to do, but it doesn't help you get anywhere. Just worrying over things, stewing over things. I was so lucky. when I first started, there's no reason I should have been able to survive as a minister for 40 years. That should not, that was an accident of the cosmos, I think. But one of the reasons it happened is because I was so surrounded by love with the first two churches that I served. One of them was like, everybody was like at least 80 years old. The minister, the first thing I saw him, Joe Owen, is you're struck, he's like 5'6". Have you ever met somebody who, when you first saw them, you thought how short they are? And as soon as you talk to them, you think how big they are, what a giant of a person. He was like that. For years, the way I got through presbytery meetings was kind of watching him out of the corner of my eye and voting however he voted until I learned the ropes. But one time I was stewing over something in the ministry, and he smoked a pipe, and he was just sitting there, and he finally said, I've found in my life that I can't make decisions with my stomach. And that was like, what a great thing. If I'm stewing over something, that's not really adding any information. I'm hurting myself. So that thing of letting the tension go, you can plan, you can do all kinds of strategizing, but the part that hurts is usually unnecessary, the worry part. So consider the birds, consider the flowers, and then this idea of putting the kingdom first. I think this is very misunderstood. That's right. And this is the worst of the pictures. It's very pixelated, but it's being a part of this life. Because like when you look at the Galilee was like Texas, it's like all the birds flew over it to migrate. So all the allergens were a part of this too. I kind of think it's kind of a bundle. But to be a part of that kind of strange cacophony of life. And I think this idea of putting the kingdom first, we always think of that in human terms. Like you think of a king and you're supposed to, put that first and stuff. That's not a really helpful type of religion. Usually it's hierarchical, it's patriarchal, it's, everything that's hurting our world. But what if we think of kingdom as it originally was intended, which was a synonym for the will of God? And if you think about, like, what is the way things are? What's the way of life? What's the way of nature? If that's what Jesus is talking about, which makes sense, because if it's an old man sitting in a chair, there's no point in going out in the countryside to learn that, right? I mean, if that's what God is, then let's go to the palace and look at that. That's not what Jesus is saying. Whatever God is probably isn't a human being, because all species emanate. Everything that is emanates from it. So it probably doesn't look like us. But what if it's the way of nature? What if it's the way things are? What if it's saying harmonizing ourselves to life is what gives us peace, even in the chaos and the turmoil? What if it means making the principles of life the organizing principles of our lives? The things that make us feel alive, the things that tell us who we are, not in religion, not in politics, not in economics, but as living beings. What if we put artificial things to the side, even for a moment, and say, what really has value to me as a living being? Money's nice, but it doesn't feed your heart. Success is nice, a good reputation is nice, but none of that feeds who you are. So I think Jesus is saying, take your highest value, not what some preacher tells you, but what feels the most value, that makes you most alive, that gives you the most excitement for living, and you make that the organizing principle of your life. If Jesus is talking about that, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So Worry is a part of the human condition. And Jesus isn't saying not to worry. It's not Alfred E. Newman. But worry can be very destructive. Somebody said worry doesn't rob tomorrow of its sorrows, but it robs today of its power. So I think what Jesus is trying to do is give us a gift. Worry is a type of tunnel vision. So he says, step back and look through the eyes of the birds. Look from a larger perspective. Broaden your horizon and look back again at your own life. And then look at it like the flowers. They're so brief, right? Their lives are so short, and yet they're so radiant. What if you made your life like that? And finally, this isn't something you can fit into smaller contexts. You can't fit it into your politics. You can't fit it in your economics, into religion. It's the container for all of those things. Take that which makes you come alive, that makes you feel your own value, and make that the organizing principle of your life. Well, that's what I think Jesus is saying. We take a minute so you can beg to differ, and you can come up with what you think this passage suggests for you. So this is a moment for your own reflection.
come to that time in our service when we pause to have some time of prayer, and whatever works for you during this time, let your mind wander into whatever works best for you. If prayer is not something that works for you, but we invite you to join us in this time. Gracious and loving Spirit, we celebrate today with Bridget and Shira, who finally were able to be married yesterday after waiting 2 years to get through COVID before they could celebrate. We join with Sarah Beth in celebrating her 95th birthday today. And at the same time, we remember Roger, who's still on hospice care, and his family that are caring for him. We want to lift up all of those that are dealing with illnesses of the body, mind, or spirit, all of those who are trying to navigate our healthcare system and doing their best to take care of themselves. We're grateful for our food pantry that was able to serve 112 households yesterday, 18 of which were new households, and giving out enough food for 450 people. This is such an important service that we are able to provide and hopefully continue to provide for our community that needs this so desperately right now. We lift up all the refugees, and especially the refugees at our own borders that come to us from Ukraine, from Mexico, from Central America, from all over the world, really, and just sitting and waiting for their turn. May we develop a deeper sense of our own connectedness to the whole world. And that includes our connectedness to our earth. We're grateful for the Muslim community and their willingness to share their iftar dinner with us this past week. It helps us to participate in things like this and gain a deeper understanding of other religions, in particular our Muslim friends in their Ramadan season, where they are called upon to share events with others as an act of kindness, and they do that very well. May we continue to live out of that part of ourselves that makes us come alive, that makes us more loving and kind. And we continue our prayers using the litany of prayers that is up on the screen right now, and I invite you to join in that. We give thanks for places of simplicity and peace. Let us find such a place within ourselves. We give thanks for places of refuge and beauty. Let us find such a place within ourselves. We give thanks for places of nature's truth and freedom, of joy, inspiration, and renewal. Places where all creatures may find acceptance and belonging. Let us search for these places in the world and in ourselves and in others. Let us restore them. Let us strengthen and protect them, and let us create them. May we mend this outer world according to the truth of our inner life. And may our souls be shaped and nourished by nature's eternal wisdom. Amen.
In our time of offering, I always like to encourage us to ponder our blessings and the things that we can contribute to the world to make it a more just, compassionate, and loving place. Sometimes the contributions are material things, and those are certainly necessary. If you can afford to and want to support the ministries of St. Andrew's monetarily, we appreciate that very much. If you're worshiping online, or if you give it another time, you can look at our website, staopen.org, and there are links there. There are links below the YouTube videos. But more than that, we look and think about things that we can contribute from our whole lives, whether it be talent or being present with somebody. And as I said last week, if you look at things that might make you a tad uncomfortable, possibly that's your calling. So don't just disregard if you go, I'd kind of like to do that, but that just makes me, I don't know. Well, give it a shot. But anyway, bring your whole self to what you give to make the world a better place. Would the ushers please come forward? Yep. That's all right. We'll live. We only have 3 baskets, so just pass them all over and over. This song the choir is about to sing is called I Am the Earth, and I want you to hear the words as a poem before we sing it. The choir speaks as the earth, the choir speaks as children, and so I want you to hear all these layers that happen during the song. I am the river flowing. I am the desert dry. I am the 4 winds blowing. I am the sunset sky. I am the forest breathing. I am the ocean wide. I am the storm clouds gathering. I am the mountain high. I am the earth. We are the children growing. You are the place we live. We are the seed you're sowing. We are the life you give. We are the future rising. We will be your voice. We will watch and learn from you. We will make the choice. We share the future, stand side by side, one earth, one people, we'll turn the tide. And in the future, they'll say with pride, one earth, one people, we turned the tide side by side. We are the children growing.
You are the place we live.
We are the seed you're sowing.
We are the life you give.
We are the future rising. We will be your voice. We will watch and learn from you. We will make a choice. For our last hymn, please rise as you're able.
It's going to take us a while to transition to live services and do that effectively. I was just told a couple minutes ago that there were 2 more prayer concerns that should have been read before, but we didn't know what that box was. So that tells us. So someone asked that the community pray for someone that will reach out for the hands reaching out for them. And Ed and Gay's grandson has been diagnosed with leukemia. So there are things that we should worry about, and there are things that are, terribly problematic in the world, but we don't need to have those displace our joy and our hope. After the service today, we always invite you to go out this way so you can learn more about what's happening in the church, but there's also a field with beautiful wildflowers. And people giving you advice when you're terrified of the future isn't usually very helpful. But sometimes I think Jesus is saying going outside, looking at the birds and realizing the world is larger than my problems, looking at the flowers and realizing that even though life doesn't last forever, there's a beauty there that makes it worth it. And then also just remembering that the artificial things of the world aren't what give it value. So just remember to value your own human heart over objects and possessions. The Dalai Lama said it like this: if a problem is fixable, if a situation is such that you can do something about it, there's no need to worry. If it's not fixable, then there's no help in worrying. There's no benefit in worrying whatsoever. Which again is easy to say and impossible to do sometimes. Just a gentle reminder that you are not an orphan of the universe, that there is a wisdom or a love, maybe a person, it may be a cosmic process, but something has sent you here, has caused you, has birthed you, and that love doesn't ever go away, that there's a love you experience that you embody when you love others, and you experience it when others love you. But you can see it through animals and plants and whatever that presence is. That's a love that goes with you. And finally, that strange, mysterious love that every religion talks about, but nobody talks about it well. In our religion, it's called the Holy Spirit, but whatever that tie that binds everything together, that we feel connected to stars and to plants and to fish. And that love goes with you always. So realize that as you leave here, you do not leave alone. These 3 loves go with you now and remain with you always. Go in peace.
Before we sing, I forgot to